Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing The Old Guard. This was based upon a Greg Rucka graphic novel of the same name, and he also acts as screenwriter on this film. It was directed by Gina Price Bythewood and stars Charlize Theron, Kiki Layne, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Harry Melling. The film looks at a covert team of immortal mercenaries who are suddenly exposed and must now fight to keep their identity a secret, just as an unexpected new member is discovered. The team is led by Andy, played by Charlize Theron. They're a group that have come together over centuries, and their immortality only lasts for a period of time. But when the team is recruited to take on an emergency mission, and their extraordinary abilities are suddenly exposed, it is up to Andy and Niall, played by Kiki Layne, the newest soldier, to join their ranks to help the group eliminate the threat of those who seek to replicate and modernize their power by any means necessary. To begin with, I'm a big fan of Greg Rucka. I think what he's created in regards to graphic novels that he's done with the Punisher series and sort of reinventing Wonder Woman in a different way, and a variety of other comics he's done. I'm a real big fan. I think he's a really great storyteller and crafts some really interesting concepts with really colourful and very engaging characters. This is a property I was unfamiliar with, and I really want to start reading the graphic novels now. And I think the idea of bringing on someone who's created the graphic novel, who's a storyteller in themselves, to craft the script for a feature film, is a very interesting way to go. Sometimes it doesn't always work. Here I think it does. I think he's a solid storyteller, and I think he's able to introduce us to this world and these characters in a great way. I liked this from the beginning. I thought it was a solid film. I thought it was really well brought to life on screen. I think the director, Gina Price Bythewood, does a solid job here. She's a filmmaker I haven't really heard a lot about, but I think she's able to capture this world in an interesting way. I find it such a fascinating story, the fact that these people are immortals and they're sort of warriors that have died in battle and have sort of come back and ultimately lived through the centuries and decades. There's something about the idea of immortals living forever that I kind of really like and found fascinating, of how long they've been around, what they would have seen and experienced, and how their ideas of the world have changed and shaped them into who they are. And I think we get a good glimpse of that. I kind of like the aspect that we get thrown into this film. We don't really know what's going on, and we follow these particular group, and then when it's revealed that they are immortals, I think it's a really interesting way to do it. Having this new character, this new soldier, who sort of ultimately becomes immortal randomly due to being killed in action. She ultimately becomes the audience. She becomes the way that we learn about everything. Rather than showing through imagery and stuff like that, she asks questions, she wants to know what's going on, and then certain information is revealed through these particular sequences. And through her character, that we really understand the world in a better way than we did when we first were introduced to it. And I kind of liked this. I gravitated to this kind of concept, and I really liked the action that was done was solid. And I like the concepts, and I like the sort of history that we get to see in glimpses. I think all the acting's solid. I think all the soldiers in the group are really good. Kiki Layne is someone I haven't quite seen before, and I think she's really solid as a newcomer here. And she has some good moments in the film. I think Chiwetel Ejiofor serves a purpose in the film, not a big purpose, but he's a very underrated actor, but I like his performance here. The villain of the piece, played by Harry Melling, who ultimately people know from Harry Potter, and he looks very different. I think he's quite good in this as well. Borders on a little cliched, but I kind of like what he's able to bring to the role here, and he plays the role in a convincing way for a character you really don't like. All the other actors do a solid job as well, but the real standout here, the real show stealer, is Charlize Theron. I think she's fantastic here. Playing Andy, a really interesting character who's been around a long time and seen a lot of death and tried to help people, but feels like she hasn't done enough in helping people. When we meet her, she should have given up a little bit. She wants nothing to do with humanity or society, and she's sort of stepped away and hides in the shadows and doesn't want anybody to know who she is, or doesn't really want to try and help people like the way she could. She sort of struggles with society and humanity and doesn't see the point in a lot of things. She's been alive so long, death is always on her mind. When's that moment that she will be able to rest ultimately? I think she conveys great emotion in this film. There's moments of action, there's dramatic moments which we know she's very capable of. The fight sequences are pretty solid, and she does a lot of her own sort of physical stunts, which I really like. And she's just a character you sort of gravitate to. And then you sort of find out her past and how long she's been through, which makes her much more interesting and engaging character than she was to begin with. And then when we see elements of people she's helped through history, this is where she becomes such a captivating character. And you really want to go on the journey with her. You really want her to succeed, and you really want to find her purpose again and direction in life. And I really love that. Like I mentioned, there's flashback sequences where we see particular things. This stuff that she's regretful for. And we see her sort of in the early days. And she talks about, when she's talking to Nile, she talks about how once she was a god that was worshipped. And I kind of like that. You don't quite know what that means or how long she's been around. They never really talk about how old she is or when she first sort of realized she was immortal and when she started to put the group together and find people in the same sort of way. There's a lot of stuff there they could go into a lot more depth with, and I think that was the plan with this sort of film, that ultimately do sequels. But whether that happens or not, I don't know. I hope it does, because it'd be sad to end it where it ends in this film, because I just feel there's a lot more richer characters and a lot more richer story to be unfolded upon us as an audience than what we saw in this film. There are things that I thought could have been a little better. I felt even though the action sequences were solid and the fight sequences were solid, you couldn't really see what's going on. There's a pet peeve of mine at the moment where, due to John Wick and The Raid and movies like that, where you see the action sequences play out in one long take and you see everything happening within those particular scenes. Here you don't see that. A lot of action movies are like that. There's close quarter combat, but you don't really see what's going on. It's really hard to know what's happening. There's too many cuts. And I just feel that in this day and age, with the action that we have, they could do it in a different way, in a much more interesting way, and have longer takes that we get to see what's happening. Like there's this whole sequence that takes place in this building where they've got to maneuver around and take out the bad guys. And I just felt this whole sequence could have been played out like that scene in Old Boy, where he's walking, the camera's dollying along and he's walking down this corridor and just fighting all these guys at once, and it's done in one big take. I would have loved to have seen this sequence done like that. I thought it would have been a much more effective way to use that. I thought they could have done a lot more in that regard. It's a little slow in parts and it takes its time to tell its story. But that's not a huge negative, it's just a little slow. I felt there was a lot of information that we really needed to know more about, but we knew enough. And like I said, if we're not going to get sequels, it's sort of disappointing. The film wasn't perfect, but I just felt entertained by it. I really loved the Andy character and I was drawn into the world, and I liked a lot of aspects of the film. Final thoughts. In the end, it's really about if you had the opportunity to live forever, what would you do? Would you help people, and how would you help them? And sometimes we feel that we're not helping enough, but we're actually helping quite a bit. We just don't realize it because we're so focused on the future and so focused on doing more that we don't see what's really happened behind us. I'm going to give The Old Guard 4 out of 5. I thought it was entertaining and fun. It wasn't perfect, but I did enjoy my experience with it, and I do recommend it if you haven't seen it, if you like something in the sort of superhero action-y sort of genre. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.